What if the biggest thing standing between you and your calling isn't fear or talent or timing? It's your boundaries. Research from the Journal of Occupational Health Psychology shows that when boundaries blur between work and personal life, people experience higher emotional exhaustion and lower clarity of purpose. Without limits, your nervous system never knows when it's safe to rest or create. Brené Brown says daring to set boundaries is about having the courage to love ourselves, even when we risk disappointing others. And neuroscience backs her up. When we consistently override our limits, we trigger cortisol, not creativity. So today, let's reframe boundaries not as rejection, but as protection for our sacred yes. I'll walk you through the Wheel of Consent from Betty Martin, a little piece of it, and a self-boundary audit that was created by Multi Amory, the podcast and the book, the band key that I created, and how your attachment style either helps or hinders your ability to honor those limits and hear your calling clearly. So here we go. Consent isn't just permission, it's clarity about who the action is for. And that's what we're going to start here today. It's the Wheel of Consent to kind of clarify how to find that aliveness. But first, we have to be within the circle of consent, which is an agreement with self and therefore then others. So if we don't have that within ourselves first, it's going to be that much harder to be able to communicate that with others. So let's go at it. Consent isn't just permission, it's clarity about who the action is for in your life and work that looks like this. So the serve quadrant, there's 4 quadrants of the Wheel of Consent. The serve quadrant brings up generosity. That's the aliveness feeling in us that you'll experience. I give what nourishes them within my limits. And knowing what those limits are is crucial to serve others. On the other side of the serve quadrant is the accept quadrant. And they feel grateful. The gratitude that they have for the server giving them generosity is I allow myself to receive the help and support I need and feel good within, not guilty or ashamed or whatever feelings might arise. Those are fine, but that's where the confidence comes in. How do we get to these wonderful feelings of the consent wheel and within agreements and knowing what our limits are? There's 2 other quadrants. The take, you can take with integrity. The feeling is if I take aligned action for my vision with consent and care and still holding that integrity of the agreement between the two of us. And the opposite of that is allow. I surrender. I let others act for themselves. And I set limits if their choices affect me. Like, how much am I going to be here? And say that, yes, you can use me for your own pleasure, but I have limits. So the allow feels the sense of surrender. The taker is doing the action upon the allower and is doing it within integrity. And these two are the other side of the wheel. And most of us overlive in serve and allow and undernourish our receiving space. And the receiving space is accepting a gift from the serve or the allower who's allowing us to take from them. If you never accept or allow yourself to take, and you starve your calling. The same goes for the take. If you drift off course and stop steering your own ship as a taker, you don't allow yourself to express what really feels alive and good in you. We're going to talk about how attachment styles affect these boundaries, affect you feeling your limits, really knowing what your limits are. As we talked about the Wheel of Consent, there's these 4 quadrants, right? And there's 2 across from each other, allow and take, and serve and accept, right? And they communicate and work with each other. To be within the feeling states of them, like surrender and integrity, allow and take, or the feeling states of accept and serve, which is gratitude and generosity, you have to know what your limits are. And if your attachment style affects your capacity, because what we're going to speak about today, then you're going to feel the outside emotions of the wheel, which means you're outside of your boundaries and also not in agreement, probably not communicating your agreement. And your boundaries can be communicated, but also set, right? Boundaries about action. Your attachment pattern shapes how safe it feels to set those limits or clean the space. And therefore, how clearly you can hear your own calling, because calling only is revealed within the space of the consent wheel. It can only be seen when you're in that space to really recognize it. You can't feel horrible and do something that feels good. You won't be able to see it. So let's start with one of the attachment styles, anxious, preoccupied. You feel loved when you're needed. So saying no feels risky, like abandoning yourself. But by saying no, if it's really what is your limit, then you are abandoning yourself. But it might feel like a riff, like, oh, if I say no, I'm saying no to that connection. You overserve and you probably overallow. You feel like you're always being taken from when in reality, the other person might think they're giving to you. So it's very confusing. It ends up blurring the lines of where you are between you and others. You're not being clear with yourself. And your boundaries leak because you fear losing connection. So you might be not actually setting boundaries at all. And instead giving, actually doing more. The work here is learning that love isn't earned through overgiving. If you've done the confidence coming out course, the first 3 parts of it is consciousness. So we're bringing first, knowing your attachment style is helpful. And then also being able to do that by is key on a regular basis. And then the second is, I'm like forgetting now, is communication. Being able to realize, oh, my ingrained belief that's occurring right now is like, I don't think I'm enough. So I'm just going to keep on giving. I'm scared of that someone doesn't like me or that I'm going to be abandoned. Then I'm going to say yes just to keep them there because I think they're going to leave if I say no. And if we retrain in the communication line our ingrained belief, it will help lessen and minimize that effect. And then also know what our need is in doing and how do we fulfill those needs for ourselves so we're not so reliant. We have analogy about being kind of needy and the anxious preoccupied, where if you're driving a car and you always go on E, then when you see a gas station, you're going to be like, oh my God, I have to get gas right now. And if the gas station doesn't have gas for some reason, all the pumps have a bag on them, you're going to freak out. But if you're someone who continuously fills up and you're on half, then you're not freaking out. So this is about filling your tank first, always keeping it at a certain level that doesn't make you starving so that you're not always saying yes. And that's specific to this analogy to anxious preoccupied. So every time you pause before saying yes, you retrain your nervous system to trust that you're still worthy, even when you choose yourself. So giving yourself some breather, learning how to reprogram your ingrained belief so that you're filling up, but also finding out what your needs are to fill up that tank so that when you are in that circumstance, you're not so needy. You do know what your needs are, being very strong within like, okay, I know what my needs are. I know what they look like because I give them to myself. Doesn't mean you stop having those needs. It might mean that you can go, hey, who can I please? And start whispering, what brings me alive? I don't absolutely need you. I can go and leave, but I know what I need. And it looks like this. And I know how to get it for myself. And I don't have to stay here. Or I know how to clearly delineate what it looks like and what happens when I don't get it. And that I honor that because I've been honoring myself in the past. Just like if you go to that gas station and they don't have gas, you don't just stand there waiting for the gas and assuming that they're going to give you gas and start whining and complaining and bartering and giving them more money. Just go to another gas station. You've got the time to do that. Okay, so dismissive avoidant. You've learned safety through independence. It's your autonomy, your independence, not feeling smothered, not feeling pressured, having ease and harmony, and boundaries feel effortless, maybe too effortless. And actually, I don't think so. I think for dismissive avoidant, they don't feel effortless in the small ways. They might give big, grand boundaries, but they might not be like, hey, when this happens, I feel this way and I'm needing this. Can we meet in the middle? They're not in negotiation. It's usually just non-negotiables, black and white. And those can feel like really hard boundaries. If you've seen any of my boundaries videos, there's one that says breathable boundaries. And those are boundaries that are able to be negotiated. They're not non-negotiable. They're actions like knowing where your line is before the line starts so that you can start speaking to your boundaries and to your limits and say, hey, when I'm here, I'm so tired that we probably should stop. I don't want to get to this because that's going to be painful. And I don't want to have to do something, which is my boundary. Instead, what happens is they get here and they might do their boundary, or they might get here and stop talking. And you're like, what's going on? And then they never talk about what's happened. So you can appear confident, but often we have a wall off collaboration or receiving support. You live mostly in take and allow, but rarely in accepting. So you may not be accepting like gifts in a certain way, and you may request something that's for you, because independence is, you already know how to fulfill some of your needs in a certain way. You're very focused on yourself, but you might not be really aware of how to collaborate. Your calling often gets lonely. It runs on isolation instead of connection. You might not be thinking too far ahead for yourself, because that's scary. That's vulnerable to voice what your purpose is, whether it be in a relationship, in your work, to even admit it to yourself. To fail and not be perfect and to not have the answers right away might seem very scary. Practice letting safe people in, or watch people who can set those small boundaries and let others serve and accept you, but also learn how to do it for yourself. That's not weakness, it's nourishment for your purpose. You might say, I know my purpose is bolstering women's ingenuity and businesses. So at any chance I have, I'm going to be paying attention to that. However, I know I really also enjoy our relationship to be in collaboration with others and share in this space. What can I move closer to? Because what happens with dismissive avoidance is they're so worried about their autonomy being lost. They're afraid that if they join forces and share, maybe not purposes, but being in agreement is having a purpose together. Being in agreement is sharing what's happening together and being partners in the consent wheel. It can be very scary to commit to them, because an agreement isn't a commitment. And it means you have to continuously reshape it. You're changing, they're changing, and you have to come together and speak to that. And that might be scary because, how about if someone wants something slightly different or it doesn't seem to jive? How do you know where your lines are? When you get close to your limit, you might just shut down because you're scared they're going to take over, because you haven't learned how to set those boundaries. So fearful, avoidant, and disorganized, it kind of has both, right? You swing between craving closeness and fearing it. One moment you overgive and the next you withdraw completely. Your boundaries fluctuate with your stress level, which makes your calling feel inconsistent. And people are like, what are you doing? Like, where are you? You probably feel that way. You're brilliant, but hard to sustain. And your healing edge is consistency, but small, predictable acts of self-honoring. So something that you can say, I can do this, and this is what I can stick with. It has to be like, you might have something that says, I can drink water. Start with one, because just doing that consistent act is in itself self-honoring. And it's not about the quantity. The small, predictable acts is what you want to get at on a consistent level. And that will start to level you out instead of being like this. If you go 8 and then you do it one day and then all of a sudden 0, you're teaching your nervous system that that is okay, right? We're wanting you to get at a level playing field and learn how to create balance in an emotional way. Anxious, preoccupied also needs to have an emotional regulation time every day. I think all 3 insecure attachment styles need to do this, have to pay attention to the bias key very strongly. That is the base of everything. And that will help start to regulate your emotional state. So we're going to do a self-audit to help stabilize your nervous system so your calling has a steady foundation. This self-audit is from Multi-Amory, which is a book, but also originally a podcast through 3 people. You can check it out. Go to Multi-Amory. But first, I want to talk about secure attachment. Your value, connection, and autonomy. You can say no without guilt and yes without resentment. You naturally move through the wheel of consent, like you understand where you are in connection to others. So when you're asking for something and needing someone to do something for you, or vice versa, how to offer something to somebody and who's doing what, and where your limits are around things, or at least you know how to take time to question in the moment that your limits may change, just like you are. And this equilibrium keeps your calling clear because your nervous system trusts that both you and others can handle truth. And if someone else is not ready, you can sense your own inner body, that bias key. You can sense that and you can go, oh, something's off. We're not in a match right now. So I need to, that's a limit for me in itself. Now let's do the self-audit, that multi-amory tool. What it is S stands for search, E stands for empower, L stands for live it, and F stands for follow through. Now let's integrate what you've learned with the tangible boundary practice. So you're going to search, list 3 reoccurring drains on your energy. If you could just imagine, remember yesterday or this past week or this past month, what has drained your energy? Think of 3. items. These videos sometimes are draining if I do too much and don't balance, and I don't give myself fun times. Speaking too much, not having enough silence is number 2. And 3 would be not doing enough physical work, like maybe I'm sedentary too much. Okay, so write one boundary for yourself that would protect that energy. The boundary is I don't do more than 2 videos a night or day. And I stay away from my phone for a certain amount of time so that I can just read, have the phone away. Okay, so choose one micro moment this week to practice it. A pause before a yes, a breath before a rescue. So after these videos, because this is my second video, I think I'm just going to go downstairs and read and put my phone on charge in the other room. And follow up, journal one line after each rep. What shifted? What did your body feel? So you can decode your no through the band key. So pick a reason or unspoken no and walk it through the band key. So the band key is the body and emotions, body sensations and emotions, the automatic actions. Maybe you have a tight chest or deep relief. I don't know. And did you people please or over explain or withdraw? And what was the necessary need? No protecting. Maybe you needed rest, safety, creativity time, or dignity. For instance, when I go past my limit of sound or sedentariness or videos, I feel like I get a headache. I feel stressed and overwhelmed. I feel pressure. And I might actually want to overdo it and do more because I'm like, I got to just get it done. Or I might want to sabotage something fun, like be like, I'm not going to go to that thing that I know is going to be good for me and I'm going to love it because I'm so overwhelmed. So my necessary need is really to take a desensitized time, maybe even schedule something that I have to go to or plan my day so that I go and do something fun before I do these and have someone call me at a certain time so that I stop doing these videos at a certain time. Planning things so that I have that necessary need met. Name the need and you name a non-negotiable ingredient of your calling. You're putting yourself in the space of your calling being revealed. Your limits aren't walls, they're lighthouses, right? So they signal where your truth lives and warn you when you're drifting off that course, like the path, right? Ding, 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 ding. And when you honor a boundary, you don't push people away, you call yourself back home to that path. It's not really about anybody else, it's about that path. And in the moment, your calling comes into focus. Because if you're not on the path, other things are in your way, right? So if you're on the path, you can see, oh, it's right there, that's obvious. Tomorrow, in day 38, we move from boundaries to pleasure. We'll learn how joy is the nervous system's green light for purpose and how pleasure heals attachment wounds and why guilt often shows up right when you're closest to alignment. We'll explore pleasure as permission, how to let joy steer without shame, and trust that feeling good is safe. Okay, thank you so much for joining me and have a great night. Bye.